Our topic is inheritance. So in fourth edition of problem solving with C++ is in the chapter 16, but in 10th edition of problem solving with C++, it is in chapter 15. So our content is inheritance basic, inheritance details, and polymorphism. So inheritance is one of the major concepts of object-oriented programming. So it allows to define class in terms of another class, that which makes easy to create and maintain an application. This also provides some opportunity to code and functionality and fast implementation time. So there are some example of inheritance that can be derived for the object-oriented is your vehicle. Vehicle have the same properties with the example is your truck, cars, and motorcycle. You can also you can also have an example of inheritance in shapes. For example, there are some classes that can be derived as um, square, circle, rectangle, and other shapes that you want to use. Polymorphism is also one of the major concepts or one of the concepts of object-oriented. Example of its um, types is, for example, means that there are so many forms, variables, functions, and objects can exist in a multiple forms in C++. There are two types of polymorphism, the compile time and the runtime polymorphism. Uh, there are example of the polymorphism is your cursor. Cursor can be may take different forms like an arrow, a line, cross, and other shapes that you want to use or on a behavior for the users that use in different types of programs. Polymorphism is also a method that have a subclass, just like your um, inheritance. Inheritance have the parent class and it has as child class. But in polymorphism, have a method or they use as the subclass. The subclass can define as the behavior or attributes in retaining some functions of its parent class. So there are some similarity of the inheritance and polymorphism. Okay. So inheritance basic. So inheritance is a process by which a new class called a derived class can create from another class it called the base class. Example is your parent class and the child class. A derived class is automatically has all the members, variables, and function that based on the class. Like for example, your variables are uh, length, width, or height that can be used as your base class. Derived class can also have some additional members of the class. Derived class can be used an example of employees for the record keeping. Just like on the employee, they have their salary and the number of hours that they have work. Uh, so example is employees have paid an hour hourly wage, and one subset of employees have another consists of employees who are paid on a fixed wages each month or each week. Although the program may need any time corresponding to the set of employees, thinking in terms of a more general concept of employees can be used or can be useful. Like, there are some variables that can be used on the employees. They are the social security number or the ID number or the employee number that will be added on the additional member of the class subclass. So here is the, for example, we have the employee class. So to make uh, a program that have an employee that have their own different or they have their own variables that are relate on the employee class, like the salary, the hour employees that belongs to the property of the employee class. The subset or another method that can be used on the employees is your fixed wage. Another subset of employees are early hour wages. Or you can also have an overtime wages for the employee. All employees have name and the social security number. You can also use employee number or any types of identification for the specific employee. So a base class is a well-defined class that used for all the employees. So the employee can be used to define the classes for the R and the salary. So this is on the fourth edition of the an example the employee program on the fourth edition of problem solving with C++. But in 10th edition of the programming with C++, it is chapter 15. So we have here an example of the base class of an employee. So the employee have the name and security number or the employee number. So the name have the variable string and the social number is also a variable type. Data type is string. So they have used other um, method, the set name, social security, not pay, and to print the specific information that you have entered on your program. So we have the public. If you want to use this one on other module, you have to set it public. So in implementation of the base class, so the base class have the properties of employee. We have get employee name, get SS name, get net pay, get set name, etc. So we will have to make a simple program using this example. So we have also derived class. The derived class is the one who use the other um, file that you have created, like your employee. So the employee have hourly employee. Your hourly employee are defined on the hourly employee that each and hourly employee define. Okay, we will have some simple example of inheritance. So this is one big program that we will have to make an example. So we have the base class. So we have the function print check or displaying some information of the employee. So an employee object lacks with sufficient information in printing your check. So it will have to also display. Each derived class will have a sufficient information to print the check. So in we have the uh, so we have the class R employee for the number of hours that you have to specify for the wage rate and the number of hours that you have specified on the program. We have the derived class and the implementation interface base class and the implementation of the base class. So your interface for the base class is your header. And so we have here specified some information and the implementation of the base class like employee name, employee set name, and the SS number. We have here SS number not pay and you have also the print check. So on the header, are initializing the base class, and on the implementation is to uh, execute the following header initialization to your implementation. So I have also some basic or sample inheritance program that we will have to execute. So to execute, by the way, to execute the employee, we have here the employee and employee header. This is your header. We have also the hourly employee. And your main is you have the name of the employee, the number. So the employee have the amount of 10,500 that will be printed on the implementation of print check. A print check. Uh, when we execute this program, so the output will be one. So your print check is to pay to order to for big shots and a sum of 10,500. So the employee number will be Mighty Joe first, 820, and Mr. Big Shot is 10,000. So we will have another example of making using the inheritance. So we will make another example of inheritance. We have include IO stream using namespace s main have first you have to make your class parent public int id uh, class child. So that are inherited on your from your parent public IDC. So child is equivalent to variable object one dot IDC is equals to 7. Object one dot IDP is equals to C out child is object one dot IDC and let's check one. Yeah, yep, okay. Child is object one. Okay, main return. Have here. So we have the output of child is 7. So you can also change your so the property the parent is also on the property of the child. So same variable. So we have the child and the parent. So we will try IDP. IDP. Okay, we have also, we can remove, let's try current. Okay, so you can uh, work around on your inheritance. So I will send this program or the sample on your Google Class. Another content on the chapter 16 is polymorphism. So polymorphism is the ability to associate multiple meaning in just one function using a mechanism of late binding. For example, is your uh, animals. We have cows and cat. They have a different meaning with the same name. Like for example, the sound of the cow and the sound of a cat. We have also an example is your vehicle like cars and trucks. So trucks have other different model, but same uh, same name, or we call it, they have different meaning, but they have one similar functions. Example is a late binding examples is, imagine the graphics program have several or different figures, like we have here the circle, the oval, and the rectangle, or etc. So they have a different classes, but they have the same meaning. So you can draw circle, you can draw oval, or you can draw rectangle. You can implement in one specific shape on your program. So we have another demonstration for the polymorphism. Suppose that the class figure has a function of center. The function center moves a figure to the center of the screen by erasing the figure by redrawing its center of the screen. So if they have a different shapes or figures of the specific uh, shapes, so we'll have to redrawing again where its center have been inherited or derived from the classes. We will make a simple polymorphism program. Good. IO3. Same names. See void s one. See out. int void s double f out put value is main s 5 s okay. So we have here a simple implementation of polymorphism. We have a different approach, but with a similar functioning. So like we have test is an integer. So the polymorphism will have to directly relate or link to an integer value. But if it's float, it will have to use a procedure of function that are have an initialization of a double data type. So this is a sample program uses a polymorphism. So we will try to execute this one. Execute. Save is polymorph. Okay. So we have an integer value and we have also float value or a double value. So it automatically use the other functions or procedures that are related to the value that have been initialized into your data type. So that is polymorphism. Okay, guys. So thank you so much. I will have to send you some activity on your Google Classroom that you will have that are use inheritance and polymorphism. So thank you and get best.